Today's show is sponsored by MongoDB. As a programmer, you think in objects. With MongoDB, so does your database. MongoDB is the most popular document database built for modern application developers and the cloud era. Millions of developers use MongoDB today to power the world's most innovative products and services, from cryptocurrency to online gaming, IoT, and much more. Try MongoDB today with Atlas, the global cloud database service that runs on AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. Configure, deploy, and connect to your database in just a few minutes. Check it out today at mongodb.com/atlas. That's mongodb.com/atlas.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Hope everybody's doing well. It's good to have you back again this week, and I want to send a big shout out to all the folks from India who have been listening. We've noticed, based on the stats, that we're seeing quite a few new listeners from the country of India. So thank you very much. Welcome to the show if you're new. Let's go ahead and get right to Cloud News of the Week, because unlike the last couple of weeks, which have been pretty slow in terms of cloud news, things really sort of picked up. A lot of sort of interesting stories starting to bubble up as the year gets going, and different companies and different technologies are starting to want to make their impact on 2020. So let's get started with Cloud News of the Week. First one was Google bought a company called AppSheet, which sort of falls in the no-code, low-code space. AppSheet was a company who had previously kind of done some integration with the Google, the G Suite, if you will. So really focused on trying to help companies that really don't have specific coding skills and give them very simple visual drop and drag kind of tools to be able to build mobile applications and web applications and begin to integrate with things like AI and ML in a very simple way. So beginning of starting to see some low code stuff. I kind of would have expected to see some other announcements from Azure and from AWS as well, but Google begins the year off in the low code space. So that'll be interesting to watch. The next one, sort of an announcement, but kind of an awareness thing. Microsoft has finally ended support for Windows 7. So for those of you still on a Windows 7 laptop, or more importantly, those of you that are responsible for maintaining corporate Windows 7, that is no longer available for support. So get that moved up to Windows 10 or Mac or Linux or something else, but Windows 7 support no longer available. Third thing I had on the list was kind of a big acquisition, and really a technology acquisition, kind of a cloud acquisition, but not necessarily from what you'd think of as pure technology company. So Visa paid $5.3 billion, that's 5.3 billion with a B, for a company called Plaid. And Plaid is one of the companies behind the scenes making the technology for things like Venmo and a number of API-driven platforms that people are building financial services on. So I thought this was sort of interesting. Actually, one of the one of the predictions I had made on the 2020 show back in late December was that we would begin to see companies like this begin to emerge and kind of move into this space. So interesting to see Visa buying Plaid for $5.3 billion. So big move in the financial services space. It'll be interesting to see how the chips and the dominoes start to fall behind something like this. Do the banks start making acquisitions? Do we see people like Square and others do that? And then finally, thought it was sort of interesting. Oracle and Oracle Cloud made a number of kind of high-profile hires that were announced this week. So they hired from Amazon Web Services a gentleman named Ariel Kelman, who is now the new CMO of Oracle Cloud. A gentleman named Chris McGugan, who had previously been at Avaya, is now SVP of Services Cloud, formerly the CTO at Avaya. And also hired from IBM, the IBM Garage program, Stephanie Trunzo. So a couple of big names from some big companies moving over to Oracle to try and rejuvenate and kind of bring some life into the Oracle Cloud and get it up from where it is and bring some greater awareness to it. So Oracle probably spending some pretty good sized money, as they've done in the past, to try and catch up to some of the other larger cloud providers. So interesting to watch some of the moves here at the beginning of 2020. So with that, I'm going to wrap up Cloud News of the Week. A little mix of technology, a mix of M&A and some other things. I think you're really going to enjoy this week's week's conversation. We have a chance to talk to a longtime friend of the show, somebody who I know a lot of you know, some of you have interacted with. I think you're really going to enjoy our conversation. We're going to dive into not only DevOps, but DevOps and how it's really evolved from a developer perspective. So I think you're going to enjoy this conversation and you're going to enjoy today's guest. So we're going to wrap up Cloud News of the Week and let's get to the interview. Today's Cloudcast is sponsored by Datadog, a cloud-scale monitoring service that provides comprehensive visibility into cloud, hybrid, and multi-cloud environments with over 350 integrations. Datadog unifies your metrics, logs, and distributed request traces in one platform so that you can investigate and troubleshoot issues across every layer of your stack. Use Datadog's rich, customizable dashboards and algorithmic alerts to ensure redundancy across multi-cloud deployments and monitor cloud migrations in real time. Try Datadog for yourself with a free trial, and you receive a complimentary t-shirt. That 14-day trial can be found just by going to datadog.com/cloudcast. That's datadog.com/cloudcast. Today's Cloudcast is sponsored by UpCloud. Is your website running slow? Supercharge your hosting performance by deploying on the world's fastest cloud infrastructure. UpCloud offers superior cloud servers with advanced scalability, instant backup snapshots, an easy-to-use control panel, a fully featured API, and a ton of integration options and management partners. Pricing starts at only $5 a month with enough performance options to host any website or app, all backed by 24/7 live in-house support. You can get started today with a free trial using the promo code CLOUDCAST at upcloud.com/signup. That's upcloud.com/signup with promo code CLOUDCAST and receive an extra $50 to get going. So remember, that's upcloud.com/signup, promo code CLOUDCAST. And we're back. And folks, I hope you've been enjoying for the last couple of weeks. We've been doing some, kickoff shows, look ahead shows for 2020. Had a lot of fun talking about data and SaaS, and we've got a few more of those lined up for you here in January and February. But every once in a while, you get a chance to talk to, an individual or a couple of people who you just can't turn down the opportunity to talk to them. Sometimes you get the opportunity to get on their calendar. And this week we are blessed. We are honored to have back on our show, very, very good friend of the show, Gene Kim. Gene, it has been 7 years since you've been back on the Cloudcast. It is great to have you back on.
Oh, it's so great. And Brian, I remember with so fondly the times we were touring the world together. And so it's great to hear your voice again and catch up with you.
Yeah. So you we're going to talk about, you have a new book that's out. For those of you who, and I can't imagine there's a lot of you, but for anybody who may not know who Gene Kim is, author of previously the Phoenix Project, but give folks a sense of all of the things that you do, just kind of on an ongoing basis, if for some reason they've been in a hole and they don't know who you are, Gene.
For sure, yeah. I've been studying high-performing technology organizations since 1999. And so that started when I was a CTO and founder of a company called Tripwire back in the information security and compliance space. And I was there for 13 years, left in 2010. And in that study of high performers, the biggest surprise was how it took me into the middle of the DevOps movement, which I think is urgent and important. And it certainly explains why, one of the many reasons why our space is so disrupted. And so I spent 6 years working with Dr. Nicole Forsgren and Jez Humble on the State of DevOps report, that cross-population study that benchmarked 30,000 plus respondents to understand what high performance looks like. As you mentioned, was co-author of the Phoenix Project, the DevOps Handbook, the Accelerate book, and book number 6 is the Unicorn Project, which really takes place in the same universe as the Phoenix Project, but instead of from the perspective of operations, it's really from a senior developer, which was just great fun to revisit that universe.
Yeah, and I assume at this point most folks know about the Phoenix Project. If you don't, go out, take a look at it. It really probably for a lot of people was the first time that they kind of got introduced to a lot of basic DevOps concepts. They got introduced to a lot of connecting the dots between sort of the Toyota manufacturing system and flow and so forth. And now we have the Unicorn Project. And I don't want to be the spoiler of the book. I had a chance to read it over the holidays. Love the book. Give us the cliff notes, because there's a part of it that's an extension, right? It's sort of the next stages of the company Parts Unlimited, but kind of give us the cliff notes of what goes on in the Unicorn Project and how it builds on or changes from the Phoenix Project. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. So it's written in the same timeline as the Phoenix Project. So very much in the spirit of Ender's Shadow, where instead of seeing it through the hero of Ender Wiggin, you get to see it through Bean. So you're seeing the story from another perspective. And so the Unicorn Project was the reason for the book, because there's a ton of problems I think that still remain. Even if you do everything as prescribed in the DevOps Handbook and the Phoenix Project and so forth, then one of them is that there's all these invisible structures that are required that are required to get developers to be productive.
Yep.
Some might call it architecture, but it's not highfalutin. It really is, how to what extent can developers do what needs to get done. The second is, and I love the fact that the last guest was all about data. Right? There's this other orthogonal problem that still exists, just like the DevOps movement. Identified that it was so hard to get code to where it needed to go, which is in production, so that customers can get value. There's this other universe of things that are equally difficult. In order for it to get data from where it resides, which is in data warehouses and systems of records, to where it needs to go, which is in the hands of people who manipulate and use it in their daily work, including developers, which is, as a population, developers plus people who use and manipulate data, it's like 35 to 50% of employees in a typical company. And so, there's this problem of like, how do you make that easy, not error prone, and it doesn't take 6 to 9 months for these data warehouses to get you what they need and not break every report in doing so. Third, there's a very strong opposition to support these kind of new ways of working. And then fourth is this ambiguity in what really we need from our leadership to support this kind of transformation. So that's really the 4 things I want to explore in the Unicorn Project, and really take it from the perspective of not operations, but a senior developer.
Yeah, there's some really interesting aspects of this. I don't want to necessarily give away the thing. There were some interesting things to me that both having spent time with you, we've been on the road, we've done road shows together. There are people who I think probably are drawn to like the DevOps Handbook or Accelerate. It kind of lends itself towards kind of an engineering mindset. And the guidance I would give to some people is one of the most powerful things to me about both the Unicorn Project, but also the Phoenix Project is it's written as a story. And sometimes people will go, oh, well, maybe it's kind of fictional and I'm an engineer. And like, I can't emphasize enough the importance of having some ability to convey storytelling, right? I mean, it's a concept that goes back as long as mankind has. You have to be able to convince people sometimes to change, right? You have to be strong-willed. You have to be convincing, and it's as much as there are interesting aspects of the story. The part of hearing the characters tell their story, fight their battles, but think of it from a story was just as important to me as the lessons learned in the book.
Yeah, and it's funny. Yeah, exactly right. And I think last time we even talked about how stories and storytelling is the most effective way to get the mirror neurons to fire in anyone else. And for me, one of the things that my own aspirations for the book was, really convey the just the joy of coding, and what it feels like when you can create and what you need to, what you want to create, and do what you need to get done easily, seamlessly, without being dependent on tons of other people. That you actually can do things independently, decoupled from everybody else, and just how terrible it feels when you can't. And so. Yeah, for me, it was, given all the research in the State of DevOps report and the Accelerate book and the DevOps Handbook, just really try to show both sides of how good is and how does it feel and how bad and sucky it is when it doesn't. And so that was very much my aspiration. Yeah,
no, it definitely comes through. So I'm curious, a lot of people know you around the DevOps community, around the concept of DevOps. I mean, you run an event called Enterprise DevOps Summit. You've written about it. I got this sense a little bit, and I'm kind of curious if I'm on track or if I'm way off base. It's written from a developer's perspective. There was a lot of what happens in the story about how they succeed kind of says, I need to get rid of this old operations team. The operations team's a problem to me. We'll take care of it. I mean, are you redefining DevOps? Because it felt a little bit like there was some frustration of like, you can't have kind of an ops team and a dev team. You just sort of have to have this dev team with ops. Like, what's the nuance in there that I'm missing?
Well, it's interesting. And I would say that's it's a story really about rebellion, and it's very much that the whole book was inspired by and dedicated to all the amazing achievements in the DevOps Enterprise community. And it's about a group of people who are trying to rebel against an ancient, powerful order who doesn't care, who care more about themselves
Right.
than certainly a group of developers who just want to get things done. And I think that is really a common theme in these transformation stories told in the DevOps Enterprise Summit. These are technology leaders who have the best long-term interests of the organization at heart, and they were impeded by functional silos who just wanted to keep working the way they've been working for the last 30 years. and so it really does take this kind of little rebellion of people breaking the rules to get the most urgent things done. And so by no means was it meant to diminish the centralized operations group. It was really meant to serve or security or the QA manager or the VP of engineering and the VP of development. I mean, it really was, I think all of them, right, were guilty of the way we've always done it, TWA, right? As opposed to, make tomorrow better than today, right? Kind of like the Google SRE, make tomorrow better than today, as opposed to the way we've always done it. So, I would say it's not just operations; it's everybody, right? And so, in my mind, it really was a book about a group of people really trying to overthrow an ancient, powerful order, an uncaring order, an uncaring bureaucracy.
Yeah.
So certainly didn't mean to single out operations, and certainly don't mean to diminish it. I think those are things are as important as they've ever been, maybe even more important. But it's, I think you're in the Kubernetes game as well, right? I mean, we need operations to, deliver things in a way very different than 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's definitely a blurred line. I mean, it's, the way tools have evolved and, capabilities have evolved, whether, they're now called SRE or they're, automated tools like a Kubernetes or just, cloud services. Like it is harder to have, to say like, hey, that capability should be a person, it should be a function, it should be a group, it just built in. Like it is more gray. In the Phoenix project, for those that read it, it was a lot about flow. It was a lot about, there was sort of some of the Deming concepts that were in there, like I mentioned earlier, some of the Toyota concepts. You really introduce sort of 5 new ideals where you bring these 5 ideals together in the book: locality and simplicity, focus, flow, and joy, empowerment of daily work, psychological safety, and then finally customer focus. The one of the really nice things about when you do books and is you don't just write a book and kind of walk away from it. You follow up, you have a whole bunch of reference material people can dig into, you do book clubs. But I'm curious if somebody's just kind of looking at these things and they're going, okay, some of those feel like they're technical things. Some of them feel kind of touchy-feely. Based on all the research you've had, like, do you find some of those are sort of would be low-hanging fruit, easier to solve, and some of them are harder, or you have to how do you think? Do you stack rank them? Do they kind of have to come independently? How do you think about the different ideals?
Yeah, I think these are so it's less mathematical and precise about than queuing theory. And it's really meant to convey kind of this more experiential characteristics of greatness. And I kind of view them in order, right? I mean, locality and simplicity is all about to what extent can teams get done what they need done without having to, communicate, coordinate, synchronize, marshal with, hundreds of other people, right? I just want to do this little deployment, but now I have to get 20 different teams involved, right? And so I love that metric of the bus factor, right? In the Phoenix project, what was the bus factor? How many people need to be hit by a bus before the project, service, or organization in grave jeopardy? It was 1, right? It was Brent, right? And I think the metric for the first ideal is the lunch factor. To get something done, how many people do you need to take out to lunch? Is it, the Amazon ideal of the 2 pizza team, or do you have to take the whole freaking building out to lunch, right? And you can only do that if things are decoupled from each other. And then when when that happens, the outcome is the second ideal of focus, flow, and joy. You can do the work that you love. You lose track of time, maybe even total sense of self, right? And that's I think why so many of us gravitate to technology work, right? Is that we love that feeling of creation and being in flow, and that that state of joy and satisfaction in the work that we do. But to get there, right, we need the prioritization of improvement of daily work, even over daily work itself. And so that was brought up in the Phoenix project. And that really, in the Unicorn project, it really is about how do we manage technical debt down? How do we, make time so that we can actually, improve flow, fix technical debt that we've, deliberately or accidentally accumulated over the past, and sometimes, accrued over decades. And so really that notion that greatness is not free. Greatness is created, and that can only come if we prioritize improvement of daily work, even over daily work itself. And then the fourth ideal is psychological safety, right? Innovation and improvement is impossible if we don't make it safe for people to talk about problems. And, I think one of the sort of aha moments for me was that, everyone talks about the andon cord in the Toyota production system. But, I think what we don't talk about is, just the sense of psychological safety that must exist for people to even pull the cord. At General Motors plants, they put in the andon cord modeled after the Toyota plants, but when no one pulls it because they know that if you do, you get yelled at by the plant manager because you're jeopardizing the daily production targets, right? So psychological safety is very important. Then fifth ideal is customer focus, really prioritizing the grandest business objectives over whatever functional silo goals we have. And so they kind of go in order, right? I think, it really is about sort of designing our work in a way where we can get things done so that we can eventually focus on the customer and earn that seat at the table that we talk about.
Right. Yeah, no, and that makes a lot of sense. I know, as I was reading them, they would kind of come up and you'd go, yeah, I can think of examples of where that makes sense. And then you'd kind of watch the characters get it, they would struggle with it, they'd break through, and they would kind of come back and go, okay, this is why this is so important. So yeah, no, it I think like you said, it's not a mathematical thing. It is sort of it's a goal. It sets your sights for what greatness is, and then you have to sort of figure out how to struggle to achieve that. So it makes a lot of sense. They build upon one another, and you can be relatively successful with a couple of them, but you kind of have to eventually get to all of them. Makes a lot of sense.
Hey, by the way, something that reminds me of about the fifth ideal. So I was talking to so the fifth ideal is really one about sort of core versus context, and that comes from Dr. Geoffrey Moore, who wrote the famous Crossing the Chasm book. Right. But I think the more important work that he is responsible for is something called Zones to Win, which is what he points out is that especially in technology companies, there's a risk of context-starving core. And so core are the core competencies of the organization that our customers value, that create lasting, durable business advantage. And context is everything else. And so context may be mission critical, like payroll systems and our ERP systems and our email, right? Our data centers, right? They're important, but customers aren't willing to pay us extra for that, right? And so that's what makes context versus core. And what's interesting is that I was talking to Dr. Geoffrey Moore's brother, Peter Moore, who's like equally brilliant, and he said, "Isn't it interesting that the fifth ideal, customer focus, is last?" Because he said, until you master the first four, you don't even belong at the table, right? That was a fascinating observation. That just really that was a brilliant observation.
Yeah. So we talked about the ideals. They, like you said, they're based on a lot of data. Kind of what does greatness look like? How do you get to that? I was sort of fascinated by the main character Maxine, who the name is sort of perfect. Her name is Max. And throughout the book, she was constantly like, well, I've built database systems, I've done ERP systems, I used to do chipset, I've been programming, and I was like, wow, she's the world's first 25X engineer. And there was a part of me that's you get wrapped up in we go back to storytelling, like you do have to sort of have inspirational heroes, like people that you can look up to, that you go, wow, they're amazing. But I am curious, like in the State of DevOps report for the first few years, there were sort of tiers, right? Like, good and better and high achievers. And then last couple of years, there's been this like super high achiever level. And I'm wondering, do you highlight that because you're trying to drag people to a higher level, or are we trying to sort of highlight just how far the really good ones have gotten ahead? Because my worry is, when you go out to like Cleveland as much as you'll go out to the Valley or whatever, it's like, I worry that the folks who aren't necessarily exposed to that every day are like, oh man, I just can't get there. The mountain is too high. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, or is that kind of a purposeful reason why you kind of structure the main character that way?
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because when we talk about high performers, and now, as you mentioned, the elite performers, right, who are even accelerating away from the high performing herd, right? We're talking about not individuals, but organizations. And I think we all believe that, there's actually no such thing as a 25x engineer, right? And the reason why Maxine is as awesome as she is to really highlight the fact that even Maxine, who is at the height of her profession, at the height of her field, right? Even when she is exiled to the Phoenix Project, she cannot do anything, right?
Right.
She can't get a build done. She can't get license keys. She can't. She's not. She's not fooled into working on features like everyone else, because she knows, right, through her decades of experiences, that features are meaningless if you don't have these basic systems that allow you to get, builds and tests and deployments on demand, right? And so, people are trying to say, they see how good she is, and they're like, "Oh, come work on this feature," and she's like, "No, right now, my mission is to liberate these developers so they can be productive again, so that merges don't take 3 days or a week, right, to perform."
Yeah.
And so, I guess my mental model for that first third of the book, which I love, right, is it's like Robinson Crusoe, or like Tom Hanks in Castaway, where he's stranded on a desert island. Even Maxine, at the height of her skills, can do nothing, right? In some way, helpless.
Exactly. You have to work through that hopelessness and figure out how to make step one. I mean, it takes a week, and very, very.
Yeah, and just to your point, right? I mean, I think that was really meant to show that there really is no such thing as a 10x engineer, right? There are systems that allow every developer to be a 10xer, or whatever that means, right? But it does show that maybe the opposite is true, right? Is that if you don't have these basic systems in place to allow developers to be productive, no one is productive, no matter how good they are. And so I just in my mind, like, Maxine is kind of a superhero, that her kryptonite were the crappy systems that let no one get things done.
Yeah, no, I think that's, now that I think about it, and again, this is why it's great to be able to sort of ask you the questions directly. It makes a lot of sense. It does highlight that no matter how individually good you can be, if the systems around you, don't allow you to be successful, nothing looks successful, right? From, you always have to step back from 50,000 feet, 10,000 feet. You can have lots of individuals who could be great, but all you have is potential without, kind of good systems and so forth.
You know what's really funny, though? One of the things I really wanted to highlight, and was a really an aha moment in writing the book, was, this kind of like these kind of 3 levels of systems, right? The things that developers work on. You have the features, right? And in most organizations, the best developers are put on the features, and because you can always get budget for the features, you can see the app, you can see the feature, right? And then the next tier down is the systems of records and the backend systems. You put the less good developers there, and then the people who work on like the CI/CD pipelines and the internal platforms, like the Kubernetes cluster, right? They'll put the interns there, right? And the people who aren't good enough to be developers. And yet, if you look at the tech giants, right, the Facebooks, Amazon, Netflix, Googles, right, the Red Hats, the Microsofts, it's the opposite. They put their very best engineers on the systems for dev productivity. Right. This is where you put the PhDs. This is where you put the people with the most experience, and then the next tier down are the platforms that every other dev team uses, and then right the ones that aren't good enough for those two you put on features. So that kind of that inversion of values and priorities I just find absolutely fascinating. And something else I hope was communicated in the book, that features, the ability for it is so important to equip developers and create these platforms so that every other engineer can benefit from it. And this is the world you live in, right, Brian?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, no. And I think that was great. And I think the way that you kind of communicated, at the point where, the development team and the lines of business were in the same room, they were talking about, the problem from the perspective of the customer. Okay, how do we go and do it? Like, I don't know that a lot of people necessarily get to see what that would actually look like. Like, we talk about it a lot, but just to sort of put it into an actual scenario, it was really powerful. I want to ask you one last question, because I want to be conscious of your time. And there are a lot of characters in the book. I know I've talked to various people who had read like the Phoenix Project in prior lives, and they said, I relate to this person, I relate to that person. Do you find that it's important to have a lot of different characters so that different perspectives can relate to the story? It's not just, those are the same 5 or 6 sort of names or titles or types, is that an important thing for you to do, or is that just kind of a richness of story?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think it is important. In fact, I worked with a novel coach both with the Phoenix Project and for Unicorn Project. And one of the toughest things is, and the thing that has to get done right, is the character development. And I don't claim, to be good at it or the best at it, but the theory is that you want the characters to be as different as possible. You want to sort of accentuate the difference and push them apart as much as possible so that you can distinguish them from each other. And it turns out, like in movie making, like one of the toughest challenges is like the World War II team story, right? Because it's very difficult to make those characters different enough so that you remember them. And so when one of them dies, you actually have that you feel bad and mourn it, right? So I think it is interesting that like in the Phoenix Project, it was the hero Bill Palmer, and he had his 2 sidekicks, Wes and Patty, right? So Wes was the pessimist, Patty was the idealist, right? And then John, the security person, was kind of the caricature of the security person. Yeah, same thing with the Unicorn Project. And in my mind, kind of the characters really were, inspired by be like the A-Team, Hogan's Heroes, the movie Brazil, where the number one fugitive is a rogue air conditioner repairman who breaks into people's apartments and fixes their air conditioning because central services won't do it for them. Right. And so the cast of characters are really, like what are the minimum number of, kick-ass engineers you need to be able to take on these challenges that they are faced with and be able to overcome them. So you have the senior cranky ops person, you have the senior cranky developer, you have the Shannon, the data and information security specialist, and then Maxine and Kurt is like the charismatic, he's like face in the A-Team. So yeah, it was just I remember months just working with a novel coach to try to kind of play with the configuration so it was compelling and would generate that reaction of, I know these people. Yeah, no, I think you did a very good job, not only in kind of diversity of people, but also just even if they were like nuanced, there was some aspect in their stories and their backstories that people could relate to. This person is very good, but they got with a bad manager. They were in this situation and they weren't funded. They were so it was there was always that thing where you're like, yep, been through that. Yep. I can relate to that. And so one last thing before I want to let you kind of plug some of the stuff going on around the book. For a lot of people that know you, they know the name, they've seen you present. One of the things I thought was really interesting in the book is you are a super people-centric person. Like, you love talking to people, you love relaying stories from people. I thought it was great that even years after the fact, you included the Target, it's either the Target or the Nordstrom Tep and Larb in the book, and kind of gave a plug to that group. Give folks the 30-second, what was the Tep and Larb in real life? Oh my gosh, yeah, the famous technology evaluation process and the lead architecture review board was very much modeled after the amazing work of Heather Mickman, senior director at Target, who has a certificate that hung proudly on her desk for years for abolishing Tep and Larb. And that story is very much inspired by that amazing story from Target that was told at the DevOps Enterprise Summit. And I think that story has generated more reactions. That story in the book has generated more reactions. They're like, where did that come from? I know that group. And unfortunately, that's very much based in real life. Yeah, absolutely. So one last thing before we go, we'll put links in the show notes to how folks can find the book and so forth, but you do a number of things around it. There's a book club, there's a bunch of resources. Give folks kind of a summary of because the thing I like about your books is you don't write them so they stop. You sort of write them, and then there's these conversations and communities and things that happen afterwards. What are some of the things that you've got that gets those started? Yeah, so we actually have a Slack instance, and we call it the IT Revolution Book Club. And there's like 800 people in there right now on discussions. I'm doing Ask Me Anythings where I'll field 25 questions in 90 minutes. I mean, I just did one this morning. They're exhausting, but they're great. It's the breadth of the questions are fantastic. And so bring your toughest questions there. And, we have a format for me to be able to, give you answers to them. And then something I just get a great deal of satisfaction around is the references, bibliographies, further reading for the book. There's one in the back of the book, and I just wrote I think a 5,000 word blog post giving like a paragraph of additional explanation and just why I think all these kind of concepts in the book, just I read a little bit more about it. So part 1 is up, and I'm hoping to get part 2 done. And so anyone who's interested in the concepts in the book and the specific stories that they're inspired by, there's just look for the Unicorn Project resource guide on the itrevolution.com site. And then, lastly, and I give one of the things I cite most are specific presentations given at the DevOps Enterprise Summit. These technology leaders telling their heroic tales of transformation. And my genuine hope is that this book is properly is giving credit to their amazing achievements. So all those videos are available on YouTube.
Very cool. Very cool. We will get all that in the show notes, folks, so you don't have to write them down. Gene, it is, as always, it's great to talk to you. Hopefully we get to do this on the podcast more often. It's always good to see you in person, but thank you so much again for the time. Thank you for writing the book. And folks, with that, we're going to wrap it up. For Gene and for Aaron, who unfortunately couldn't be here, was very, very bummed he wanted to catch up to you with Gene. Folks, with that, we will wrap it up. And folks, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.